£500,000 in damages.
This is the High Court, where QCs and judges decide who pays and who gets paid.
If they said to me, you can have £1 million, that might be tempting.
Some people find what newspapers print or television says unforgivable.
Hey, Uri, what's this thing with Michael Jackson? Is it true?
Some people will do anything to set the record straight.
Worst case scenario is it goes away to trial and I don't sell the house. Where am I going to get 200 grand from in November?
So why get yourself into this position? Why take the risk?
I want justice. However much I don't want to go to court, I will.
So be careful what you say. See you in court may be the most expensive words you'll ever hear. Tonight, two men speak out in the public interest and then desperately try to defend themselves when their targets sue them. Science writer Simon Singh is being sued by the British Chiropractic Association for questioning their treatments.
We support our friend Simon 100% in this ridiculous case that cracky does not equal medicine. And am I in the case now? Am I in that? Am I?
And the costs he faces are enormous.
If I lose the case, that could be a bill in excess of £250,000.
Tristan Rogers is being sued by a property company over critical comments he posted about them on the internet.
I just thought he was bluffing, actually. So I thought, fine, do what you want. And then he did.
Facing a claim of £100,000 he can't pay, Tristan asks for help from the libel lawyer other libel lawyers were turned to represent them in the High Court.
I don't like the way the claimants have behaved.
Bullies, if they see weakness, they don't back off.
This seems ridiculous to me. I was only telling the truth, and I did it in good faith for good reasons. Basically, I saw it as I was doing a public service.
We have to test homeopathy with an open mind. I've been testing it during the course of this lecture. You may have noticed I've taken some of these homeopathic sleeping tablets. And I'm seeing if I fall asleep before any of you do.
Simon Singh is passionate about science and delights in both popularising and using it to debunk what he thinks doesn't stand up to scientific scrutiny.
Now, it sounds utterly incredible and ridiculous. But in science, you have to be open-minded.
At home, Simon's walls testify to the award-winning books and television series that also earned him an MBE. But in April 2008, Simon wrote an article in the Guardian newspaper about chiropractic medicine in which he questioned some of their treatments.
There are people who claim that they can treat conditions not related to the back. Childhood conditions as well, things like colic, asthma, ear infections. And for me, that's not substantiated by evidence. For me, that's really concerning because we're talking about childhood conditions that are sometimes quite serious. So the point of the article was to make people aware that these claims are made and to discuss the evidence or lack of evidence surrounding these claims.
He invoked the wrath of the British Chiropractic Association, who promptly picked up the phone to their lawyers and sued.
Smartest thing in the world would have been to have backed down. I think settlement would have meant a payment of a few £1,000s, nothing big, and an apology. But the problem then is that any other science journalist who wants to write about these kind of things realises that if you do write about it, then somebody threatens you with libel, you have to back down, what's the point? It has a chilling effect on journalism.
A year after his article was published, the decision to defend himself brought Simon to the High Court in London.
It's a day I won't forget. The judge was going to rule on the meaning of the article.
Simon believes that what he wrote was fair comment based on his knowledge of chiropractic treatment. The judgment went differently.
So I came out of the Royal Courts of Justice somewhat shell-shocked. This was the nightmare scenario. My barristers and my solicitors, their jaws dropped. Things hadn't just gone badly, but had just gone catastrophically badly. What Justice Eadie ruled was that I was calling chiropractors deliberately dishonest, that I was accusing them of peddling treatments that are not only not backed by evidence, but which they knowingly promote, knowing that there is no evidence. Could I appeal the decision? And Justice Eadie actually said, no, I'm not going to give you permission to appeal. Because for him, it was such an obvious decision, it wasn't worthy of appeal. For us, it needed to be appealed. If I lose the case, I'll have to pay my own legal costs and I'll have to pay their legal costs. And that could be a bill in excess of £250,000.
The first step in Simon's fight back is to work out a way with his lawyer to win the right to appeal Mr. Justice Eadie's decision in favour of the British Chiropractic Association.
Well, we've got to attack the judgment of Mr. Justice Eadie, and we've got to say what we think the right answer should be.
And so that'll say things like, we don't believe that Justice Eadie necessarily took into account phrases used earlier on in the article.
I think that's our point. It's a point of libel law that you have to look at the whole article. We all think that the article, in the light of the rest of the paragraphs, the somewhat harsh things you say at the start are softened. Yet not a jot of evidence, for example, and bogus treatments. You actually explain why they are. We need to be able to say that they have misled the public on colic, sleeping and feeding problems, frequent ear infections, asthma and prolonged crying. Now, we've actually got an admission from them in the reply that for two of them they don't have any evidence. But we do, of course, have the problem that a decision like this is difficult to undo. It really is, litigation with the knobs turned up to 11.
Tristan Rogers' first and only experience of being caught up in the world of libel began innocuously enough. The property management company looking after the block of flats he was living in North London told him they were going to conduct a fire survey of the property and that the residents would be charged for it.
I said, well, hang on, we weren't consulted on this. And they said, no, well, you're legally obliged. What is this fire survey? Where does it come from? They said that they mentioned something about an act that had been passed. So I asked them which act it was, and they wouldn't tell me. I took advice from the council and from a surveyor, and both of them said, no, you don't qualify for this. We started putting pressure on them to cancel the survey. They said they couldn't. They said it was an automated process with the contractor. Give me the phone number, I'll ring them up myself, I'll cancel it. No, we have to do that. We got a final email from the management company saying, you will face jail time if you don't go through with this. In the end, they did cancel it. We got charged. After that, I called a meeting here with my neighbours and said, look, this is really bad news. They shouldn't have done this.
Adding this to the other concerns the residents had about the property company resulted in them firing it. But Tristan was so upset at the company's behaviour, he decided to let other people know of his experience and decided to use the internet to voice it.
I'm pretty familiar with the internet. My company basically builds software to be used over the internet. We're using the internet to enable thousands of people to better communicate. I found property forums, and that's the thing in London, there's so many people in flats who are either share a freehold or they're leaseholders. So there are lots of people in our situation. So I thought, well, there's going to be thousands and thousands of people out there in this company's catchment, and they could all be subject to the same behaviour. I posted some reasonably strongly worded comments saying, I very much regret working with these people. In my opinion, they can't be trusted.
What Tristan did next led to him being sued.
I used my real name and I provided details for people to contact me. So I was fully aware of what I was getting into, but I had facts on my side. I got one letter from them. They gave me 24 hours to remove the postings, or they were going to pass it on to their solicitor. I just thought he was bluffing, actually. So I thought, fine, do what you want. And then he did. Can you send me an email? Because I'm out of the office until this afternoon, and when I get in...
The company sent another letter telling Tristan he'd failed to meet their requirements and wanting money for their costs. Other letters followed with the same demand, until...
I then get another letter, but this time it's a High Court summons, which was awful. And when you see High Court, it's not small claims court, it's not this guy says you owe him a bit of money. The claim was for libel and malicious falsehood. They hadn't put a claim value in, but the maximum claim value was £100,000. So very, very, very significant sums. I read through the document and I just thought, right, I'm way out of my depth here. This is not something I want to be doing. I definitely need help. How on earth am I going to afford to deal with this?
Oh, hi, it's Simon here. Are you still okay for the press conference on Wednesday? Signatories are looking great. We're just really gearing up now for next Wednesday, so it's all looking good.
Simon Singh is also looking for help. A pressure group called Sense About Science has taken up his case, saying it shows how the libel laws are being used to silence doctors and scientists who want the public to be warned.
Correspondence from the big papers.
Right.
I'll get it on board.
I can see all the profs and the journalists and the editors. So we're over halfway to 100.
That's right.
Harry Hill, I had him on my list because he's a background in medicine and somebody would be great to have on board. And Darren Brown's here. He's the latest addition to the list.
And Dara Breen came to us as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, Dara's talked at length about science and rationalism and alternative medicine. And so I know this is an issue that's close to his heart. It's an extraordinary mix of names. It's brilliant.
We think we're in this kind of movement towards greater openness, much more transparency, an age of informed consent. And in fact, actually, what we've got is something that's struggling very hard against that and threatening to completely chill it. You have to remember, someone can bring a libel action against you for anything. Whether that then stands up in court is another matter, but of course you have to pay all the money to get to court, which is ruinous for most people. So the likelihood of them winning at shutting you up is very, very high.
Appropriately, Simon helps launch the campaign with a press conference at the home of scientific debate, the Royal Institution.
Sorry, we're obsessed with the costs of this, but just in terms of your personal liability for this stage now.
I think right now it's £100,000.
Yeah.
If I were to settle, in addition to that, I'd have to pay the BCA's legal costs.
And these costs are already running to over £200,000, which is not surprising given the current English libel system.
The cost of an English libel case is 140 times greater than a European average. There's something seriously wrong here.
There's a famous episode of South Park, which you can see on the internet, about Scientology. And there's a running gag in the cartoon about Tom Cruise. At the end of South Park, the Tom Cruise cartoon character storms out and turns to the mocking children of South Park and says, "I'm going to sue you in England." And I would like to make the point that's not very funny, actually. The fact that joke's made in South Park is also a sign of the rising international concern about what the English legal profession is doing to freedom of speech. The most famous case is Roman Polanski, who fled from America after accusations that he'd had sex with a 13-year-old girl. Then Vanity Fair a few years ago printed a piece about him which included allegations of a sexual nature, and he sued. And it went to the House of Lords, and the House of Lords said, oh, well, even though he's on the run from accusations of child abuse, he can still sue in London. And then Polanski says, oh, but actually I can't come to London, because if I do, I'll be arrested and deported to face accusations of child abuse. And the law said, oh, never mind, you can do it on a video link from Paris. And he did, and he won.
Costs in the case were estimated at £1.5 million.
Do you like plums?
Yeah.
Tristan Rogers isn't fighting his case in the public glare, like Simon Singh or Roman Polanski for that matter, but he's just as worried about the costs involved.
What we own between us. So it's not even my assets at risk, it's ours, and it's a home that's at risk, potentially.
It threatens our stability, definitely, yeah. I mean, I think anybody would feel that with, you know, a potential huge amount of money being taken from you. I'm in total agreement with him. You know, these people were bullying us. All Tristan posted was the truth. And then Tristan was saying, I'm going to defend myself. And the prospect of that is really quite scary.
She was drawing the obvious conclusion, which was, well, if we are subject to a claim value of £100,000, we can't afford that. We'll lose our home. And I said, well, yeah, technically that's right, but don't worry, it's not going to come to that. But you're thinking, well, what if it does? I mean, how do you get round this?
Tristan's first action was to approach solicitors he knew for advice.
Their first response was, well, you need to put together all of your evidence to substantiate your postings. So I literally stayed up all night and I just put together a dossier. It must have been 100 pages.
Tristan sent his solicitors the dossier, but their reaction was sobering.
Just to put a legal response together is going to cost you about £10,000. And then if it goes to court, you could be spending another £50,000 with representation. So I said, well, clearly that's not an option. And they said, well, the other thing we advise is that you just ask them how much this is going to cost for it to go away. The management company, they wanted, I think, about £18,000. So I said, well, there's absolutely no way I can afford that. Half of me felt regretful that I'd got into this situation. And the other half of me thought, you know, sod this. This is not, I'm right. You can't, you're bullying me. You're bullying me into submission by throwing big numbers at me. And I'm not in a position to fight.
However, Tristan's solicitors had a suggestion. He should look for a specialist libel firm, one that was prepared to fight using a conditional fee agreement, a no-win, no-fee device. He was pointed in the direction of the libel lawyer voted by other libel lawyers as the man they would most want to represent them if they were ever sued: David Price. Being a QC as well as a lawyer means he can represent clients in and out of the High Court.
Tristan's case ticks a lot of boxes, as far as I'm concerned. He's a nice chap. He's sensible. His case has got merit. I don't like the way the claimants have behaved. Not liking the way that my opponent has behaved is quite an important part and parcel of, I'd say, the moral side of a conditional fee agreement, which is, am I up for it? Do I fancy it?
From a Dickensian-looking office in Fleet Street, David Price has built up an enviable roster of well-known clients, from Cheryl Cole to media organisations like The Telegraph. But half of his work involves people like Tristan defended on a CFA.
I believe in CFAs because I think they give access to justice to people. I particularly believe in them for defendants. One of the reasons I'm attracted to doing defendant cases is that people are tending to fight on principle. They believe in the truth of what they say. They're defending their freedom of expression. I don't think that people should have to apologise for saying what might be true just because they can't afford to fight a court case. I personally find that offensive. But there are no guarantees in this business. Someone like Tristan, you want to say, don't worry about this, it's going to be fine. But you can't, because there's always a risk of something going wrong.
Cheltenham and its Science Festival represents the way Simon Singh thinks science should be debated, openly between experts with the public judging.
He was an astrophysicist from the 1940s, a chap called Fritz Zwicky. He invented the notion of dark matter. But the thing I really love about Zwicky was he came up with a wonderful insult. If he didn't like somebody, his insult was to call them a spherical bastard. By this he meant a sphere is a geometrical object which looks the same whichever way you look at it. And a spherical bastard is someone who's a bastard whichever way you look at them. And,
other two it says...
This Saturday night cabaret has been organised to highlight the need for libel reform and raise funds for those, like Simon, who find themselves on the wrong end of a lawsuit.
I was going to talk about libel, which is not an entirely riskless activity, especially given that there's at least one Bentley-driving millionaire at this festival who has himself threatened me with legal action. Ideas in science and medicine improve because they're criticised. That's not a sort of side issue, that's the core of how ideas progress. If you go to any academic conference, you'll see scientists being absolutely vicious with each other about their ideas. And that's because it's really important that our ideas improve, because in science and medicine, you can do great harm, even when you think you're doing good, and I'm sure that most chiropractors do think that they're doing good.
Well, that's very interesting, Doctor, with the complex stuff. But now, in the name of balance, we must turn to some witch doctor, quack, homeopath, horseshit peddler on the other side of the debate, right? Now, I've nothing against well, I do. I can't take it. It's water and sugar cubes. I'm not a pony, right? You know, if I'm sick, give me medicine. Or, do you know what I mean? Don't stroke me on the snout and wish me good luck, right?
What Simon was doing was a more rigorous form of the kind of work that comedians have been doing in a more shambolic but kind of passionate and gag-filled way for a while now. There's been a general movement about things like bad science, whereas as I put it, like we're too old for fairy tales, and there's no time we stopped.
We support our friend Simon 100% in this ridiculous case that he has up against him by the Chiropractic Institution, who are just trying to bully people into pointing out that cracky does not equal medicine. And am I in the case now? Am I in that? Am I? I did 23 weeks with a chiropractor. Ever tell you that? The cracked me and pushed me and cracked me and pushed me in every direction. And then eventually went, do you sit in your wallet? And I went, yeah, that'll be the problem. Right? Tear those bastards down, yes. And when you're there, get my cash back off them. Where you're at.
Pressing on with his battle to win the right to appeal the judgment against him, Simon now needs the skills of a libel barrister to find the best arguments for overturning it. Fortunately, given the costs Simon already faces, he's found a barrister who believes in the principle of his case and is prepared to help on a CFA.
The comments I've had from people who had read the judge's judgment and said to me, I think the judge was right. When they've then been shown the surrounding paragraphs,
right,
their view has changed. And I think, the context is the single most important thing.
When you talk about definitions and meanings and so on, and bogus, you sort of seem to accept that bogus means sham, counterfeit, and then it's a question of, is the person knowing that what they're offering is a sham and a counterfeit or not? And there is another use of the word bogus. Bogus just means bad, poor, unacceptable, doesn't do the job.
The most important point I feel about bogus here is that you explain why you say it's bogus.
Yeah, I didn't say... I know... I think this is bogus, not because I've seen a letter where they say, this stuff doesn't work, but we're going to keep... I know it's bogus because of...
It's as in worthless, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
And I think the problem here was that the judge allowed for only one meaning. He gave his meaning of it and didn't allow for the looseness of language like that. I feel quite strongly that we've got very powerful arguments. This is not just somebody who is tasked by the editor to write a piece on something he knows nothing about and does a bit of search on the internet and so on. This is someone who knows an awful lot about the subject. It's so important to know what the boundaries are of free speech. Arguing about what the meaning of words is, arguing about whether it's a comment or an assertion of fact. I think that if they say this is comment, then you're over the hill then, because it becomes a matter of your opinion.
As long as we get the fair comment, we're
I think that's the most important
we've got the wind behind
element. Yes.
Tristan Rogers is on his way to his first face-to-face meeting with his lawyer, David Price.
I'm not high profile, neither is the company that's pursuing me. It didn't occur to me in the slightest that I could be in this position. To be accused of libel and malicious falsehood, it sounds serious. And it looks like the consequences of being found guilty of it are serious.
Afternoon. Hi, David Price.
Tristan Rogers, pleased to meet you.
David Price has come up with a tactic to avoid a lengthy and expensive trial.
What we're trying to do is get the claim against you struck out. What that means is dismissed before a trial. The court has a power to strike a case out if it's particularly weak, and we think that the claim against you is sufficiently weak to justify making that application. Number one reason is that we say it is an abuse of process. Basically, we're saying the whole thing is a waste of time. It is completely disproportionate. This is a limited company that has suffered no loss. I mean, they tried it on with a couple of £100,000 claim to frighten you, but they didn't actually see that through into their court documents, and if it's not in the court documents, it's irrelevant. So they're not claiming any financial loss. In their letter they sent to you, they didn't explain why what you said was untrue. They never told the internet service providers why what you were saying was untrue. And the costs are going to be substantial. It's going to take a lot of court time, and what's the bloody point?
So you say it's a technicality that we're trying to get it struck out, but they've obviously got the defence document that we've put together.
Yeah.
So, the judge would read that in detail?
Absolutely. That's our next point. Malice is quite a serious allegation. The courts require a claimant who's going to allege malice against a defendant to specify carefully the grounds on which they say this particular defendant invented the allegation. They've got to prove that it was false. And not only that it was false, but you knew it to be false. So we think, irrespective of the defamation claim, we can get the malicious falsehood claim struck out.
So for this strikeout, there's something I can attend?
Absolutely, yeah. One of the factors the court bears in mind in this sort of situation is the effect on the defendant. So that's why we wanted a witness statement from you, where you talked about the stress of this court case, about how it takes up time, how you have to think about it, how there are financial considerations for you, your position in life with a young family. So that also goes into the mix. I mean, there's nothing to be gained really from being a defendant in a libel action. You're not going to get any money out of it. No. It's going to, whatever happens, there'll be a lot of waste of time and stress. But that's just unfortunately an occupational hazard of being sued.
No legal practice is going to give you a guarantee, but I couldn't have done this on my own. If it wasn't for the fact that they've engaged with me on this CFA process, I wouldn't be this far forward.
So Nick called me this morning, about half an hour ago, and...
Simon Singh would agree about the time and the stress. It's almost 2 years since he was first sued. Essentially funding the case himself, he knows only too well the financial pressure, but he's attracting more and more public support.
Cheers, bye.
These are the Westminster sceptics. They campaign to ensure that public policy is based on the facts and nothing but the facts. They're discussing the case of Simon Singh.
A year ago, nobody cared about the issue of libel. The people that are here, in fact, are the people that have blogged about it, twittered about it, joined Facebook groups, told their friends. And the fact that this is now on the political agenda is one of the things I think we should be celebrating tonight. The pressure of libel is to take out the guts of the article. So in my case, if I'd not mentioned the British Chiropractic Association, I probably would have been fine. But I thought they had a case to answer, so I wanted to mention them specifically. Earlier on in the article, I called them wacky and fundamentalists, chiropractors. Now, maybe I can be sued for saying that. So all along the way, you just have to take out and take out and take out until you end up saying virtually nothing. The chiropractors themselves, they are getting so much bad press. A very large number of their members have started withdrawing the claims that I was complaining about.
There's no question Simon's case has made the public more aware of the flaws in the current libel system. But he's still struggling to win even the right to appeal. Turned down twice before, tomorrow is his last chance. His lawyer's going to court to make a 30-minute appeal in person.
The odds are against us now more than ever, yes. I mean, I'm not saying it's without hope.
If we get the Court of Appeal to look at this seriously, then we're in with a good chance. The problem is getting them to...
I'd say we're in with a better chance. I wouldn't necessarily say we're in with a good chance.
If we are turned down tomorrow, and it's very difficult actually, we're pushing a snowball up a hill. We've already failed to get permission from the judge. We failed to get permission from the single Court of Appeal judge. This is last chance saloon. I think the Court of Appeal should give permission to appeal, but I have that natural pessimism, which I suppose drives one on to try and do well. A natural pessimism that we've lost twice on appeal, and, third time unlucky.
The rules only allow Adrienne 30 minutes to state her case. The judge makes his decision there and then.
Thank you very much as well, Colin. Thank you very, very much. Fortunately, he sided with us and agrees that our points are arguable. And I have got a big grin on my face, but I'm trying not to get too excited, because we've now got to go to appeal. We've got to win the appeal on meaning. Oh, hello, Mum, it's Simon here. We were in court today, my legal case. Yes, and we had a good result. Very, very good result.
Tristan Rogers is still a week away from his day in court, the day when he hopes his lawyer will be able to strike out his opponent's case. Assembling his defence has thrown up more evidence on the practices of the property company suing him.
When I looked online to find out what postings had been made around this company, there was evidence, basically people expressing the same concerns that I had. This chap, he's able to make postings, making exactly the same point as me, but he's obviously posting under a pseudonym. It's not his real name. And I can only assume from that that's one of the reasons why he hasn't been pursued.
Which is more than can be said of the website itself. The website that Tristan posted his comments on is called London SE1, run from this church in Bankside. James Hatts, who runs the site, was contacted soon after Tristan's comments were posted.
I had an email written in quite strong terms demanding removal of various comments about their company. When I requested that they explained in a bit more detail why they were unhappy, I then had a telephone call where they took an extremely belligerent and rude approach in seeking to intimidate and seeking to have anything unflattering about his company removed from the web.
This claimant just seemed to have kind of one approach to this case, which was just full-on kind of, we are just aggressive. We don't do sort of anything else other than that. It's, certainly in relation to the websites, actually, the threats got even heavier. Two of the website, what happened was that they put an explanation for their readers on the website saying, we've taken this post down because we've been threatened with legal proceedings. And the response to one of the websites in relation to that was to say, we're going to put you into liquidation if that doesn't come down by Friday, or Monday we're going to come round to your house.
The property company subsequently said that they had only meant they would go round to the house to discuss the dispute. But the property company didn't only want to close down critical comments about them.
They had a very definite marketing policy at that point that they were trying to up their web presence, and they were signing up to various websites under various different sort of names and posting stuff that was favourable to them.
There was evidence of this company making postings about itself as if they were a happy customer, and there were also postings about their posting saying, this is spamming, this is not a genuine customer, this company is terrible.
They're boasting here about how they can manage properties in a 100% transparent way, which is quite ironic considering what later transpired. The company had also posted some messages under another name, quite above board, being clear about who they were representing. And the IP address where these messages came from was the same as these so-called impartial recommendations.
This posting here is made allegedly by the company, his posting is still here. They're still using the internet to propagate their message, but they've stifled mine.
They started this whole trail by posing as a satisfied customer. And I think that makes it even more oppressive. You try and generate favourable publicity. A whole series of people who've had a bad experience with you tell others about it, and then you sue them.
It's the morning of Simon's right to appeal hearing, and he thinks the public campaign has really helped him.
That seems to have come together to make people realise that it's time that we, in England we deserve to read the truth. And in order to do that, we've got to allow journalists and writers and scientists and bloggers to be able to write the truth. What happens today is just extraordinarily important. Thank you very, very much.
The fact that 3 of the country's most senior judges have been assigned to hear Simon's appeal clearly shows the courts are taking the matter seriously. But he still has no guarantee of the outcome. After a day in front of the judges, things appear to have gone well for Simon.
He made references to the cost and the time, not just my cost and time, but also actually the BCA who are racking up costs and time. And it's just the whole thing kind of just should never have really happened, or should have been resolved in a much smarter, quicker way. And the whole thing about libel is it's not about what I or other journalists or researchers or bloggers can write. It's what the public is eventually able to read. And it's the public that loses out.
I think they came in thinking, why in a society like ours should one not be able to write this sort of material?
And somebody sues you.
One hates to come away feeling that things have gone well, because you just know how more painful it will be when you get the judgment that drops you in it again. But I felt that it had gone really well.
Realising the importance attached to this judgment, the judges will take a month before they give their answer. Time for Simon to reflect on the costly decision he made 2 years ago.
If I was a 25-year-old journalist with not much money to my name and not much support, and I was put in this situation, I'd back down straight away. I'd have no choice but to do that. But I'm not in that position. I'm wealthy enough and old enough and big enough to be able to fight this. If I don't fight it, then I was going to say I'd be spineless, but in a chiropractic context, that's not quite the right phrase. It would be, if I can't fight it, then who can?
Thank you very much for coming along. It's not good news, it's great news. We've actually got an extraordinarily positive ruling on our side.
The Court of Appeal upheld our application that the words bore the meaning we said. They also upheld our application that the words complained of a comment. What that means is that Simon just has to prove that this was an honest opinion he could reasonably have held on the facts available.
The serious concerns the judges raise in their ruling about how the libel laws are currently being used has given strength not only to science writers specifically, but also to the wider political campaign for libel reform.
My first son was born 10 days ago, and Sense About Science gave me this wonderful little keep low. And I can see from his eyes he does support the campaign. So we've got a victory today, which is fantastic, a victory on the meaning after 2 years. The case could go on for another 2 years. To decide the meaning of these words will have cost £200,000. Now, fortunately, we're not going to have to pay that now. When I say we, I mean I.
Are you going to write more about the BCA or about chiropractic after this?
Probably not till the case is over.
Simon's got 2 things. He's got a wallet and he's got balls. That's why this case is here.
You'll get a T-shirt which has that.
I think what this means is that every scientist who's getting sued, every Any time the BMJ or Nature or Lancet get a lawyer's letter, they should be able to rely on this case and say there's now a presumption that this is comment. I think people will be referring to it as the Singh comment. There's a paragraph even in a textbook now.
I've always dreamed of being.
Yes.
Every time I've done it
Exactly.
I've got to be a footnote in a legal text.
Exactly. It was a great feeling. I think it was the best day of my professional life.
With just a couple of days now until he too is in court, Tristan is having doubts.
I feel that I should be confident in my defence, but I can't help but feel that there's a risk involved. If you're in any kind of battle, I always feel that the most valuable thing you can do is to put yourself in the other person's shoes. So my opponent's now getting free representation from the UK's leading experts in this field. The fact that he's being represented on a CFA means that the practice must believe in the case. They're happy with the evidence. If I were in his shoes, I'd just think, OK, I tried it on. I know what I did. And this guy's not backing down. It's time to bail. Let's just walk away from this before it gets horribly expensive. And he didn't. And that really caught me unawares. That really shook me up. Brings doubt into your mind. Well, if he's prepared to gamble that sum, what does he know that I don't?
What Tristan didn't know was that the property company at the last minute decided to hire their own libel specialist, and that has affected Friday's strikeout hearing.
Friday was going to be about trying to get rid of the case, trying to have the whole thing struck out, but at the last minute, the other side got a new legal representation, somebody who knows a bit about libel, and they've cobbled together a case. My judgment was that it was the right thing to get an adjournment and come back to fight another day.
Instead of Tristan winning his strikeout, he has been asked to take part in mediation with the owner of the property company that has made his life miserable for the last year.
Probably a week hasn't gone by in the last 6 months where I haven't considered this. This has already been a protracted process that's been driven by the claimant's desire to pursue me, so I don't see how today's going to change anything. Yeah, this is a person at the end of the day that I've never met. I've spoken to him on the phone. I've had countless email exchanges with him. I've always found his attitude to be at best obtuse and at worst downright aggressive. So I'm quite happy to meet the man. I want to see who I'm dealing with. If this doesn't work, and I don't expect it to, then I guess we'll be going to court.
Their response is always an aggressive one, so my judgment is that they've done what they've done because they think it's a way of getting out of the predicament that they're in, but it's just postponing the inevitable and increasing the costs. When you're in a hole, you either climb out or you carry on digging.
Libel cases are notorious for going on for years. In Simon's case, he's become a father in the time it's taken just to overturn the original judge's decision.
Oh, we've got a smile. It's very extraordinary. So this is him. This is little Harry. The appeal court ruling was fantastic from my point of view. It said that the meaning of my article was exactly what I said all along.
That is not the outcome that the BCA had expected, and they have now decided to drop their claim completely to avoid further legal costs being incurred by either side. The BCA also noted that Simon Singh had said publicly that he had never intended to suggest the BCA had been dishonest.
I've no doubt at all that the bandwagon was very, very effective in making the judges realise that the law needed an adjustment. Interesting that they said in their judgment that they had no doubt that there had been chilling of writing in this field. This is not about celebrities or who's having sex with whom. This is about medicine, it's about science, it's about better understanding, better ideas, better debate, better advances and progress in these areas. And that has to have some freedom in which to do it.
The reason I wrote the article was to make people aware of chiropractic. I think 1 in 4 chiropractors are currently being investigated for making misleading claims. And parents who want their children treated maybe will think twice before going to see a chiropractor. So that's great. That's a real bonus in a way.
But Simon's now found out that in libel, a victory doesn't deliver exactly what it says on the tin.
They now have to pay my costs because they started this whole nasty business. A victory means that I will probably get about 70% of my money back. I'll lose 30%, which means I could still be £50,000 out of pocket for having won a fight that I never wanted in the first place. It doesn't matter if the sting of what you're saying is actually true. It doesn't really matter if the broad emphasis of your article is in the public interest. If you can just be tripped over by something that makes your life hell for 2 years, costs you tens of thousands of pounds, even if you end up winning, that's going to mean that life for journalists, bloggers, academics is just made that much harder. And who loses out in the end is everybody.
Tristan's mediation meeting did not end as he expected.
I've attended a lot of mediations over the years, and it can become pretty clear pretty quickly if a deal is achievable. Sometimes you walk in and a party is aware that they're in a really weak position and they're just wanting to get out.
In Tristan's case, the other side offered a deal.
When the claim was settled and I was off the hook, I felt fantastic. I was vindicated. Maybe not by the court, but if the claimant drops the case against me, they're dropping it for a good reason.
Defendants got nothing to gain by being in a defamation claim. Only stuff that can be lost, money that can be lost, having to apologise for something. But in this particular case, Tristan was able to get away without it costing him a penny. The company paid £75,000 of our costs, and I don't know what the company's costs were, but they were probably a similar amount. He didn't have to apologise, but he agreed not to repeat the allegations that the company was complaining about.
Tristan's now moved house and moved on. For him, the legal system worked, but it has been 9 months of worry. He now realises the dangers that can follow from using the internet to warn others.